This is a presentation made by Heritage Llangwm, which shows the archaeology part of a much wider project, which was centred on the restoration of our 12th century church. The church, St. Jerome's, was built on the foundations of a much earlier 9th century church and was in imminent danger of closure. The excavation of the church floor, the first dig, was carried out under the watchful eye of James Meek, then the senior archaeologist at Dyfed Archaeological Services. Here are two of the volunteers cleaning around an early Victorian floor heating system. And this is the coal-fired stove. Some of the volunteers here are examining disarticulated human bones, which were carefully collected and reburied in the churchyard. This photograph shows an example of some of the previously disturbed and disarticulated human remains of 12 individuals found beneath the suspended timber floor of the nave. These two slabs, found in the underfloor rubble, are thought to be the remains of headstones. And this too was found in the rubble, a concrete pillar base. In the church, a geophysical survey was carried out using ground-penetrating radar. This showed some anomalies under the surface. Now we move up to the second dig site, at Great Nash Farm to the northeast of the village. This is an OS map from 1875, which shows other buildings around the farm, including this dovecot, a Grade 2 listed building.
The dig at the farm has been progressing well, and the archaeologists have made some interesting discoveries.
Just looking through a number of the finds we've got, a number of these have now been washed as well. Still looking at some lovely pieces of medieval pottery, rim sherds of jars, cooking jars, a lot of pieces of jugs as well, very typical medieval kind of pottery. And a few bits that are, they don't look like much, just very basic pottery, ceramic, terracotta on the outside. But as we see on a number of the sherds, there's a lot of sooting on them, so they were definitely cooking pots. They've definitely been in a fire, because we've still got some of those remnants of the burning.
This barrel vaulted service room was found under the northern ruin of the original manor house. And this is followed by an aerial photograph of the farm in August 2016. A geophysical survey of the walled garden revealed this grey-scaled plot, which shows soil-filled ditches and a buried wall. Circular anomalies recorded here could be soil-filled pits, post holes, or infilled tree boles. These are the remains of an elderly female dog who had a very painful condition, the fusion of two lumbar vertebrae. Other small mammal skeletons had also been buried in the walled garden: a kitten, a cat, a ferret, and a lamb or a goat kid. Now we're looking northwards at walls revealed in the western end of Trench 1, with the overgrown medieval ruins of the manor house beyond.
Attention now turns to a farm believed to be the site of a medieval manor house built by the De la Roche family. The research team have already discovered that the family were descended from one Godebertus Flandrensis de Ros, who was born in Pembroke Castle in 1096. They hope to find evidence that this site was occupied as early as that, but records only show an occupation from 1244 onwards, so a 19-day excavation is planned.
Right, we're just starting to do our gradiometer survey of the walled garden. We've gridded it out, we put down our lines so that we know exactly where to walk, and we're just training up the first group of people to do the survey itself, which involves walking up and down very systematically up and down a 20-metre grid that goes across the walled garden. It's taking readings about every 25 centimetres. It's doing all these differences in the magnetic susceptibility, really, of the ground below. So things like ditches and pits might show up. Hearths show up very well. Metal objects show up far too well, unfortunately. So that's where we are.
18, 19, 20, 2 beeps.
Perfect. Yes.
One of the visitors to the site, MP Stephen Crabb, was looking at the volunteer team working in the 3 trenches. And this is one of the volunteers, Graham Brace, who excavated the base of a medieval cooking pot. A separate part of the project was a research trip to Belgium, where we met Dr. Mannix Peters.
So now we're entering, in fact, the working place of the man in the village responsible for the smokehouse and the bakery.
Gosh. So as research director of the Flanders Heritage Agency, you were responsible for developing the whole site?
Yes, I had the opportunity to do the excavation. So in 1992 they looked for somebody who could, during several years, who could do the excavations here. And it was a collaborative project between the province of West Flanders and our heritage agency, and they gave me the time to excavate all the area necessary in function of the development of this area. So I had all the opportunity to do the excavations in ideal circumstances. We know through archaeological data that the village already probably existed in the 10th, 11th or 12th century. They in fact lived from fishing, but fishing is in fact an oversimplification of their activity. Besides fishing, they do piloting of merchant vessels, they do piracy if they can, they perform military service for the Duke. All the fishing villages, to give them, I think here in Raversa, they had to give 2 ships with completely armed and with the military people included.
So would that be the same when William of Normandy took his invasion force to Britain? Would the people of Flanders have gone with him with their ships? Would he have commanded or commandeered those ships?
That could be, because where do you find ships? William had to cross the channel, so he needed ships. That it is fairly probable that they also looked for ships in fishing villages.
So the men were off fishing. What role did the women have in the village?
I think that's something which comes clearly from the archaeological evidence. This village is completely dominated by women. Women, they govern the entire village. Women also help during the harvest season for the farmers. So we find a lot of evidence that women also play an important part in the economy. They do also some additional bit for the income.
In our own village of Llangwm, the women sold the fish and travelled many miles to sell the fish. Is there any evidence of the baskets that were used to carry the fish? Because again, in Llangwm we have women carrying what we call panniers, which are wicker baskets, large wicker baskets with leather straps over their shoulders.
Yeah, we have found a lot of wicker baskets in the archaeological record. Also the netting needles, which are probably, I think, made by women that mend the net or make the nets even. And which are nicely kept netting needles with a property mark on it and so on. So there is I strongly believe that women are dominating. Women, if you would have a look into the village, you would see walking around women and children.
So, James, have you got anything exciting to tell me?
Oh, we've now got the dates back for the pottery. The best thing about the dating is the majority of the pot we got is definitely medieval. You know, of all those good bits, they're all in the sort of high medieval period, so 13th, 14th century. But we have had a number of sherds that actually go back into the 12th. In fact, one of them I think is meant to be early 12th century. Wow. And if we start going back to that period, we're obviously pre when we think Great Nash was established. So it would imply that there's, I mean, certainly we're not in the middle of Llangwm. You know, we know Llangwm was established before that period, but Great Nash House itself, to actually have that pottery coming out from the site that's of the, you know, early 1100s, I mean, that's really good news.
That means that there was somebody on that site, there was a habitation there, before the date that we found, which is 1244 with Sir David of Llandegynni.
There was an awful lot on site because we only dug a couple of small trenches, but we have 2 large boxes full of the material. There was a lot of it, you know, and so a lot of cooking pots. Yes, it's disposable, but it does imply, especially as it's only with one house, it does imply a big kitchen. You know, there's quite a lot going on, a lot of cooking and a lot of breaking.
Yeah. The film of the whole project, In Search of Little Flanders, is available on YouTube. And earlier this year, it was won a Best Feature Documentary Award in an international competition in Brussels.